everybody, welcome to Life is Brewtiful. I'm Anthony, and today we are going to be discussing something that I find incredibly interesting. Today we're going to be talking about the great German beer brewing crisis, the greatest beer conspiracy of all time. We are going to be talking about the Overman Committee. The early 1900s were a very tumultuous time for America. We had just recently gone through a massive influx of immigration. There was a huge economic and industrial boom. Landscapes, cities, society was changing as a whole. We were even victorious in the world's first great war, World War I, where we went across the oceans and we took down the axis of evil. Peace had set across the globe. Economies were on the rise, but the American government was more suspicious than ever. They were convinced that there was a scourge, an enemy in our midst, a wolf in sheep's clothing hiding amongst our own population of freedom lovers. And the United States government believed that these nefarious no-gooders, these baddies, were actively plotting against the United States government in order to overthrow it and install a communist regime. And they had a really, really good idea who they thought these bad boys were. And that's German beer brewers. So to give a little context, before America enters into any armed conflict, there are several motions that we as a society go through. And one of them is a slow, gradual build of anger and resentment towards whoever we see as the enemy, whether it be ethnic, religious, or national. We just start developing a little prejudice against them. Now, a little side conspiracy, some people actually believe that that's actually the government socially engineering us to build up all this rage and resentment against whatever the targeted group is. That way, we can build up enough support for the government to intervene militarily, and it'll basically have no pushback, no resentment, and it'll be a popular war. All social engineered through propaganda and just manipulative messaging. Anyways, in the case of World War I, that enemy was the Germans. According to a 1910 consensus, apparently 1 full percentage point of the entire United States population was German immigrants who had slowly started immigrating over since the 1860s. And although these immigrants were what we would nowadays consider to be the ideal immigrants, they assimilated extremely well into society. They were very successful professionally, starting up their own businesses and bringing over the best parts of their traditions and heritages to, build up what the melting pot that is America. But when America was debating on whether or not they should actually enter into World War I, a lot of German immigrants were like, no, we don't want y'all to do that. We still have family, we still have friends, we love our homeland. We understand what they're doing is not necessarily right, but we don't want to be the ones who are actively drafted in to go fight against what is still essentially their kinfolk. But because of that, a lot of the American population then started to view these German immigrants as the enemy. It was very us versus them mob mentalities type. In fact, in the months leading up to World War I, the Senate heard countless briefings about how there were German sleeper agents waiting for the opportunity for America to be weak. That way they could rise up and overthrow them and instill their communist regime. One particular senator really took it to heart. The fear consumed him. And that was the senator from North Carolina known as Senator Overman. Inspired by these intelligence briefings, he decided to take it upon himself to lead a committee of investigators to hunt down and imprison these German sleeper cells. The first targets on his list were the German immigrants who he thought would have the most sway, the most power to be able to pull off something on this large of a scale. So he went after very successful businessmen. He went after people who were rising up socially and politically. The German immigrants who were seeming to exceed in all of these areas were actually German beer barons. Remember when I said that a lot of the German immigrants came over and they started instilling their own cultural and heritage practices into the American society? Well, one of the main things that they did were start breweries and bringing some of that old world brewing technology and technique and creating a thriving beer market in the United States. They were the perfect targets for Overman. So in 1918, Overman actually took down his first beer baron, known as Gottfried Krüger, who had recently traveled to his homeland. Gottfried was 80 years old, and he wanted to see Germany one last time before he was too old to make the journey. You know, I'm sure that was like a month-long voyage at that point in time. So he wanted to see it one last time with his eyes before he died. Unfortunately, that marked him as enemy number one in Overman's eyes. Adding to Overman's suspicions, Krüger was extremely successful in the brewing market. He was a businessman through and through. He started the Krüger Brewing Company in New Jersey in the 1800s, and he was able to successfully grow his company large enough to where he was able to start buying out another American breweries here and there, making a bit of a conglomerate and taking over a massive region. So Overman saw these two things as definitive proof that Krüger was a German spy sent to destroy America from the inside. And through some shady legal mumbo jumbo, he was actually able to, one, kick Krüger out and send him back to the fatherland, take all of his money, all of his property, and take complete ownership of the Krüger Brewing Company, which had grown up to be so successful, and essentially it was destroyed through this process. Reeling from the success of the Gottfried Krüger investigation, Overman decided that, yeah, this was a very lucrative thread he was pulling on, and he would be able to dismantle the entire plot just by taking out these brewers. So he started looking into the overwhelmingly German American Brewers Association. And Overman believed that all these beer barons were coming together to be able to pool their resources and money together to be able to buy elections, pump out propaganda, basically finance and plan their whole operation. And out of his investigation into the Brewers Association, 2 more German descendant brewers were actually kicked out of the United States and sent back to Germany for undermining American interests. What they had actually done is pulled their money together and purchased the Washington Times from a suspected socialist. And it was because of who they bought it from that took them down. They both put upwards of $50,000 towards the purchase of this media outlet. However, there was no solid evidence that they were actually planning on using it in any nefarious way. It was simply the fact that they were German, both of them, and they were buying it from a socialist. That was it. That was all the evidence it took to convict and eject them. Which kind of makes you think, why didn't they just take down the socialist dude in the first place if they had such a problem with it? You know, why'd they have to wait for them? It's almost like entrapment in a way. Now, at this point, you can probably tell. Overman is pretty suspicious. He's paranoid. And there seems to be a lot of prejudice going on that feeds into this paranoia that allowed Overman to be able to do these things to these innocent people. However, I can't lie. There was some very suspicious activity going on in the Brewers Association. During his investigation of the American Brewers Association, he found that there were actually 15 German descendant brewers who were actively contributing money to politicians in order to sway campaigns and elections. And before they would actually accept their political puppet, they actually made that politician perform pledges to German nationalism. Bit suspicious. Additionally, this same group of German brewers were establishing social clubs all over the United States, from Texas to New York, New Jersey, all up and down the East Coast, spreading westward. And the whole goal of these groups were to bring German immigrants who were fresh off the boat and help assimilate them into American culture. The problem was, during these indoctrinations, they would frequently have pledges and phrases like, Germany first, America second. And at this point in time where there was so much rabid suspicion and so much just negativity going towards the German people, that was viewed especially unpatriotic and evil. And Overman was getting all of his resources together to go and take these bad boys down. Unfortunately, the Overman Committee just kind of like disappeared. Following the conclusion of World War I, no one really cared about German immigrants anymore. Like, the whole conflict was over, the whole world was tired, and they just wanted to rest. Overman's final report was in 1919, and it was resoundingly dismissed by almost every single politician his desk it came across. They all said the exact same thing. There's a lot of fear, a lot of paranoia, and a lot of conjecture, and not a whole lot of proof and evidence. That was basically the end of it. I mean, the Overman Committee just collapsed basically overnight, and everyone was all like, I guess we had nothing to worry about at all. And it's actually a great thing that that happened, because the whole thing was just built on paranoia and prejudice, and there was no substantial evidence that proved that any of these German brewers had any plots or plans to take down America. It really sucks for those 3 brewers who got kicked out and had their brewery taken away and all their hard work just destroyed by the government without any repercussion. And as far as Overman goes, as much as I'd like to say he was just kind of kicked to the curb and washed out, that's not true. He was then hired to lead the investigative committee into the Bolshevik Revolution going on in Russia. And his techniques and procedures of investigation actually went on to create the founding principles for America's current intelligence gathering agencies, particularly the FBI and CIA. So I propose the real conspiracy here was not a bunch of beer barons trying to overthrow the government, but instead, I say it was an internal government plot to be able to create overbearing and intrusive government agencies that collect and spy and invade your privacy in order to maintain discipline and order by the elite on the helpless population. Without a doubt, the Overman Committee was the greatest beer conspiracy of all time, especially since the real conspiracy seems to be that there was no conspiracy. But all in all, it does make it truly one of the weirdest moments in beer history of all time. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. This was a really fun video to research and talk about and do, because there's 2 things I love. It's beer and conspiracies. So this was a whole lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe. Remember, there is a story in every bottle, and that life is beautiful. Cheers.